What up, y'all? It's your boy Classic Michael. Welcome to another episode of the Nine Conversations, where we say now over never because now or never gives you too many options. Today, we're going to take a pivot from some of the things that we've talked about in the past on this show. We're going to talk about mental health, specifically from the perspective of the Black male. You're going to get an opportunity to be a fly on the wall in today's conversation with two friends of over 30 plus years, two Black men with a healthy friendship for over 30 plus years. They're going to talk about mental health from the perspective of family, education, careers. They're going to talk about being vulnerable, being insecure, and the expectations of a man, specifically a Black man. So I don't want to give too much away, but hopefully you'll enjoy this conversation. See y'all in a minute.
Pink, pink, red. So many pink, red.
It took me years and therapy to realize that I was resentful of what I thought he should have been to me. But then I realized my parents had me when they were 17 and 16. They were kids, so they weren't even developed enough to pass on the emotional traits that I needed growing up because they were still learning.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, cool.
Now, go ahead.
Papa's best friend.
Yeah.
So
I also heard data that a lot of times, like, your mental growth stunts at the time that you have your first child.
Ooh.
Male and female.
Okay. That
Stunts.
explained a lot.
Yeah, and it takes time and purposeful growth to move past that.
But that generation would never have this conversation.
My man. And like me looking back at my dad's life as an adult helped me to understand things differently then. Because like my dad was, he had us, like, you know, it's funny how you say that now. He had us when he was grown. But he was like, what, 21? 22?
That's not grown.
And like even thinking about like me, I had like Neil was born when I was 24.
Yeah.
You know, Cameron 25.
And we were still
The
learning.
boy is I'm sorry, he's a man now. He's 24.
So can we imagine, okay,
him starting a life.
Yeah, Neil's 24. My girls are 22 and 21. So in essence, at their ages, our parents were already parents. I can't comprehend my children being parents right now.
Do you know like the age when your brain is fully formed?
Was it what, sometimes in 30s?
25.
25, okay.
And then, you know, why did my Cameron was like, so you got married before your brain was fully formed? I'm like,
I love my niece.
Technically, yeah. And then she threw out, you know, for men it's longer.
Such an intelligent
but it's
young lady.
it's still that balance. It's that purposeful work. Like even finding a good therapist is hard. Because I think for men, it's kind of beneficial to have two. Like I have one that's the first one, and that's not, I don't always go at the same time, but it was a dude that I reached out to, and it's honestly when I got into leadership.
Okay.
Because I mean, I'm a leader in spaces that don't look like me, and the way that I move, you know me, is a little different. I tend to be direct, and in certain spaces, that's not always acceptable. So I wanted a therapist. I wanted a Black male therapist. And so it's hard to find one. He was a generation older than me too. So the things that he
experienced are totally different.
Was coming out
okay,
as trauma, but it wasn't necessarily my trauma. I also think it's important to get like a female's point of view.
Okay.
Because just interacting, like the way that, just interacting with things like being married, and I want to understand like how I'm maybe coming off to my wife and my daughter.
Okay.
And just learning how to interact with women specifically, and Black women too, to find that balance, because we can communicate differently.
We do. That's interesting that I've never thought of that perspective of having a male therapist. All my therapists have been female, and I know that comes from my upbringing, to where in my family it's women. It was my grandmother, my 5 aunts, my uncle, then me. That was the household I grew up in. So I have a reverence towards specifically Black women.
And who can you be vulnerable around?
Grandma and mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but I've never thought about flipping the switch and having a male therapist. So
it's hard for men to be vulnerable around other men.
It's hard for us to say we love you.
I mean, real talk. I mean, like with Kev, I just checked in with him, but like with Kev leaving, like he's like, "I love you, man." He was probably the first dude that I said I love you to.
And we were friends 20 plus years before we started doing that?
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
I mean it's an unspoken thing. I mean, we know it, but to actually verbalize it and being able to be comfortable verbalizing that, I mean, it's not the norm for men, specifically Black men.
Yes.
But
yeah. I mean, that's even like as an educator, that's some of the things that I'm working through. Like when we look at like discipline, like there was this, I have to be aware of how I phrase this. Situations in which our boys are advocating for themselves or they're hurting and it comes out in a certain way and it becomes discipline. Like if a boy said like, okay, you're getting on my nerves, I need you to leave me alone. But you say that to a white woman and your tone may be too high or too loud. It becomes aggressiveness and disrespect. So like there were times when I first start, I mean, and this is not just in leadership, but like I've been accused of trying to being kids' friends. But I'm not intimidated by a 12-year-old boy, and I'll check that behavior. Yeah. So like then I coach on how to say things, if that makes sense. So no, you're not gonna say like, you're not gonna tell me to shut the F up. It's gonna be like, no.
There's ways to communicate your feelings and teaching the next generation how to do that.
Yes.
As we learn too.
And still allow them to feel the emotion.
Right.
Like even like there was a situation in which there was a kid, he wore a hoodie all the time, and nobody ever asked him why. Like he would have his hood up. But so like, and the rule was like, you don't wear a hood. So every day this boy is coming in there with his hood up. And he was tired. But also people would make fun of him because he was skinny. But then there was a teacher who basically almost backed this boy into a wall, trying to force him to take his hoodie off, his hood down. And so he got it down, and then so he's refusing to look at her. He's looking down. And she's backing him into a wall. And he's the one that got in trouble. So like in certain things, you've got to coach, like if he's not looking at you, leave him alone. Because he's trying to control himself. Give him time to adjust. So it's like, and then ask him like, so how are you feeling? He said, look, it's a dude I'm working with. I got this little, you'd be proud of me. It's this thing that's called like circles of feelings. And you start with like basic feelings in the middle, then you branch out to like more like specific ones, then you branch out to more specific. So you have like you have like anger, then frustration, and then like disappointment, things like that. And you go out and you can either work backwards or back in. So every time I see him, he's like, yeah, I'm chilling. Okay, so I need more than that. So what are you saying? Because what happens is, it's like there's a situation where he gets into it with a teacher or another student, and the teacher asks him like, how are you doing? Like, okay, are you okay? He's like, oh, I'm chilling. And that teacher thinks he's okay. He go back into the classroom, or the teacher says something to him, or somebody else says something to him, and then he acting out again. Okay. Because he's not actually chill. But he doesn't because he said that, they going on what he says without actually reading him. So this is some of the things that is trying to coach boys on at a young age, to say that.
Man, that would have been good when we were growing up. That would have been excellent.
As opposed to just, I mean, I love my mama, but hands.
A wiffle ball bats?
Unofficially never happened. So yeah, no, I mean, but it's just being able to know that, seeing how my dad grew up, and making that connection as a grown man. Like, man, being a black man in the 60s that's strident and highly educated. He was one of the first black men to graduate from UMSL with a psychology degree. All his friends were really strong leaders and very strident. All of them got into leadership early. And then some of them got like drug habits. Some of them, like, I know that one of his like close friends went to I think it was Florida, and was like high up in management and like either Boeing or something like that. It probably was, what was it called back then?
Mac.
Yeah. And ended up, I think he committed suicide. And like when your close friends are doing it and you are constantly in white spaces, for places that don't look like you, and you always fighting against that, is hard.
I can't even imagine the frustration and just to fit in.
Yeah. I mean, even, I don't know where I would be without y'all. I mean, like, I don't even know if my son ever got that. Like, when you think about it, like, we grew up in black spaces before we got to Kirkwood.
Before we got to Kirkwood, we were strictly black spaces. Yes.
Black spaces. So we had
home,
that
church. Yep.
I mean, and how many black kids have the church community? And I'm not just talking about the religious aspect of it, but the community aspect of being in a black space.
Yeah.
And then going out to be in dominant culture. I mean, integration is equivalent to separation. I mean, that's especially as a black male. So, I mean, that's understanding that. Like, once you begin to integrate, you will be isolated and separated. So,
my experience, because I'm corporate America, I'm more corporate than you. I very seldom go into a room and find another black male. It's more, I've had more black females, but black males are few and far between, which, as far as mentorship, as I went through my career, was very hard to find. As far as me personally trying to navigate that space, I try to be me as much as I can be without being overly aggressive or offensive, because I'm learning to have a filter in life.
You have a filter now. I've seen you filter.
Okay. But knowing that, okay, and I've always felt that since I'm the only black male in most spaces, I represent the black male diaspora. So knowing that, I dial it back to the point to where most of my coworkers, past and present, think I'm just this very quiet, laid back, dorsal guy. But that's the only way. If I showed my full personality, they would be totally uncomfortable. So it's a simulation.
To me, that's the dance. How much of me can I let out? But not only that, it's not just let out, it's trust.
Yeah.
It's trust. I mean, I don't trust the environments of the people that I'm around, because what you say is not necessarily what you will do. And I can't trust what you'll say in other spaces. I know that I can trust you based on how you talk about me when I'm not around. And a lot of people, it's not necessarily true what people say to you and what they say when you're not around.
Say to you or say about you.
Yes.
Okay, true.
So that's the hardest part. Yeah. You know, I started in corporate America.
It's been so long I forgot.
Yeah. And then, like, I was an intern and they was like, oh, you must be intern Neil. Well, how did you guess?
Funny situation. My first day, graduated from college, moved back to St. Louis. First day at what was at the time a Big Six accounting firm. Get off the elevator, walk into the double doors, reception at the front desk. Good morning, Byron. I literally, of that starting class, I was the only Black there. So the fact that she knew me when I walked in the door says, yeah, that has to be Byron, because he's the Black guy.
My dissertation, when I got my my little EDD, was the importance of Black male teachers to Black male students. 2% of all educators are Black males. 2%. Like, I worked in a large district in St. Louis. Well, technically kind of St. Louis County, but whatever. And there were about 1,800 full-time employees, 1,800 like teachers, and there were 19 Black males.
You're saying that, and I'm thinking, I'm going back through school, outside of coaches, gym teachers, music teachers, and art teachers, I had one male teacher. Outside of that was English, math, science. I had one Black male teacher throughout my entire school career, and I think that was 6th grade English teacher.
You know what the blessing is that you could differentiate. How many Black male teachers have you had total?
Total, maybe 10. Like I said,
9. But the thing is, that's a big number. It's generational. And like what my research showed is that, generally speaking, having a Black male teacher, specifically male, is beneficial to Black boys and girls for building community, but we don't always benefit them academically per se.
Okay.
But a lot of that has to do with the spaces that we're kind of in. Like, a lot of times that's in white spaces, so it's more than just that individual teacher. But the strange thing is, the ones who benefit the most are white kids and brown kids who aren't Black. Because the brown kids who aren't Black are generally considered either white or ignored by the dominant culture.
Okay.
And it's just interesting. Like, the surveys that I took was like, how much impact that we have on it. So it's like, I think what it is the perspective that Black males bring. When we're allowed to share it, is beneficial to the spaces that we're in.
Listen, obviously the conversation was flowing, but I wanted to take a step back to allow these gentlemen to talk about how they met and how the desegregation program and the busing program of the late 70s and early 80s actually brought them together. Take a listen at this part of the conversation.
We pretty much grew up in the same area. I tell everybody jokingly, but also seriously, I'm just another Black kid from the hood. If you know North St. Louis, born and raised. So the St. Louis public schools at the time weren't the best. So my mom decided to enter me into what they called the DSEG program. So we were bused out to predominantly white schools in the suburbs to get our educations, because they were, at the time, quote, they were a better school system. Going back, I met this cat first day of high school on the bus to school. He was the last stop. When he got on the bus, all the seats were full. He was like, "Bro, can I sit with you?" All right, cool, sit. That was it. We've been tight since then. And the hindsight portion of that is, he was more able to integrate, assimilate, and navigate the racial issues or issues at Kirkwood than I was. So I leaned on him a lot at school to navigate issues of race, hanging out with people that didn't look like us. That was him. So yeah, we've been, 30 years? 30 years?
No, 90, 89.
89?
I don't do math in front of people.
Yeah, that's a long time, but that's how long we've been friends.
Yeah.
And like you said, building a relationship, he's been, we've been through the good times and bad times. Okay, I'm gonna try not to cry on this one. When my stillborn son, I remember this cat. I don't remember if I called them or if somebody else called them, but I distinctly remember sitting in the chair, holding my stillborn son, and this cat just standing behind me with his hand on my shoulder. That's not friendship, that's family.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I mean, we don't talk, we don't have that friendship to where we need to talk every week or on a constant basis.
Mm-hmm.
But we both know that a phone call, text,
Mm-hmm.
we're there, period, point blank, no questions asked. But we've been through the good times too. His kids call me, I'm Uncle B.
Mm-hmm.
His wife is Sis.
Mm-hmm.
I see his mom out,
Mm-hmm.
Mom. So that is very important because it's him, it's our partner Kevin,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a few other cats
Mm-hmm.
that I can honestly say I love
Mm-hmm.
and that have actually poured into me growing up from childhood to adulthood and to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's his fault I don't have more friends now. Like Byron, Kevin, Courtney, Bless. You know, it's people that I'm cool with, but like understanding the difference. And it's sad how I have to coach kids on the difference between friendship and people that you're cool with. There's a whole bunch of people that I rock with that I'm cool with. I don't have to talk to them every day. When stuff goes down in my life, this is the person I'm calling. If I need support with something, this is the person that I'm calling. And honestly, not to be funny, I know I can be a lot. So I can't be around everybody all the time. And because I care about people, I do give space. But the thing is, he's seen me grow. He's seen who I was and who I am. I can be whoever. I can be intelligent Neil. I could be a-hole Neil. I could be angry Neil. I could be sad Neil. And he's seen it. And he cool with it. But also, like, he knows how he can bring me back. Like, if I'm upset, if I'm frustrated, like, no matter what he do, I got him. And like the hard part, especially like with you, Kev, is only certain people that can send me to jail. And what I mean by that is if you go somewhere, if you something popping off, I'm there.
Right.
If something popping off, I'm there. When we started DSEG, we were one of the ones that started the program. It kicked off in like 79, 81. So we are like the generation that kind of started the DSEG program. Out for like Brown versus Board of Education. And then it went through the court case here in St. Louis and it culminated in 79. And I was in first grade in 81. You know? So it explains a lot. And then like what happened with Meacham Park and Kirkwood. I mean, how they got separated and like just by us going from a black space, like you said that it was easy for me to integrate into that environment is because like our paths were a little bit different. Like me and my sister, we like hood adjacent. We grew up in the hood, but it was certain places my mama wouldn't let us go. So we know rules, we know context, and we know where not to go. But to keep us from going certain places, she put us in church. She made us go to art museums and like hung out at her school when she was going to Funbot. So we were always kind of in integrated spaces, but even in truly integrated spaces. Like when I went to Classical Junior Academy, it's quote unquote a whole gifted school from 2 to 8th grade, 2nd to 8th grade there, and it was across the street from Sodan. So most of the teachers I would say were African American or black. About 51% of the kids in at that time in the school were black. And if you look at other school districts, how many black kids are in gifted programs? And then, you know, you have when the school system starting to change, now I think that dynamic is different because a lot of kids spread out to go to because of DSEG. So a lot of the kids who would have been in these gifted programs are now spread out separately into these the county schools. So it's just the community aspect of that is different, and it caused what happens to the city schools. I'm not going to call it a decline, but how you teach, and when you have the people who really value like pushing yourself academically or pushed out into black spaces. But then also, who do you get to learn with? Like a reason that a lot of times like black kids or black students struggle in colleges because they don't use study groups. They think they have to do it themselves. I mean, like, when was the first time you got into a study group when you was in college?
I'm different. I went to HBCU.
My fault.
The presence of a HBCU is community. Is everyone looks like us. This is a space where we can go and be comfortable in just being us. So that's going from Kirkwood to where we were the minorities, to going to Grambling to where everybody looked like me. Was mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's changed. So study groups there, I fell into a clique to where we did everything together from study to kick it, and we pretty much formed kind of like the same bond me and you have, to where we made sure that each one of us had the tools to succeed. Accountability, and we drilled. I mean, we would party hard, we would kick it, but when it came to studying, and it just so happens that the group, all of us were business majors, so we made sure that, hey, I'm struggling with chapter 3. Okay, cool. Call Steve. Steve got that on lock. He can help you. So it was that sense of community at a HBCU that actually helped me, and I actually haven't found that any place else, because there's very few places to where you find people with the same mindset of, okay, we're here to get educated, we're here to learn, but we're also here to be ourselves outside of an HBCU. It was almost like our paths were almost reversed. Like my path got more and more white, or more into dominant culture. Like, I started off in all Black communities in my church and in home. And then, like, my mother wanted me to learn how to interact with other people and speak differently, because I went to gifted schools. Technically, I guess you could say, call it learning, how to speak, use AAV. And so I got put into Matthew Dickey. That was, different. Then I got out to Kirkwood, and even Kirkwood, like, it was predominantly white, but because of Meacham Park, there was a lot of Black people there. Yeah. So it wasn't that different. The difference is that everybody didn't rock with each other the way they did in the gifted school. Yeah. So I still had that community, but now it's like, okay, this is stuff that Black people do. This is stuff that white people do. And I'm like, whoa. And that's how I was able to rock. Like, that's why I appreciate you, because it's like, when I get around like Black people, like people come from different parts of life. I just put it that way. And then you see me popping in there listening to James Taylor. And like, they used to make fun of me because I would use like big words. And so I would use like polysyllabic words, but I would also like cuss, because that's why I'm using like my polysyllabic words are cussing in the same sentence. And then he translating for folks, for me. And then it made it easier for me and to be in like predominantly Black spaces that weren't academic or weren't like Christian. It's like, it helped me to be a Black nerd and be cool with it. Before being a Black nerd was cool. Yes. Yeah. And then I could be just me. You.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation as much as I am. I asked the gentleman to expound on how exposure and experience has come to play a part in their careers and other parts of their life when it comes to integration, assimilation, and just being accepted for who they are as Black men. Take a listen.
For me, go back to, like I said, my parents had me when they were young. So it was, and then they weren't together. So single mom. So she worked to do what she do to raise the 3 of us. So she didn't have the time or the funds to do stuff like museums and stuff like that. So I really wasn't exposed to a lot of stuff outside of my immediate family, community, and church until I started getting older. So I say Kirkwood was the first time I was ever around people, white people, on a regular basis at that large level. And like I said, it took me a while to navigate, and I still navigated towards more of the Black people. That's why I say he helped me out navigate the interracial thing. So going from there, I did a small stint in the Army, so that was a little bit more integration. But I was still one of the minorities. So when I finally got to Grambling, and it wasn't culture shock, it was like I exhaled.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, okay, let's be. And that, I think that is where I started to grow into being who I am today started. Because I was able to just be, okay, I'm laid back, I can do this, I can do that. But everyone was there because that's part of college, is learning who you are. I was just blessed to do that with people that looked like me, who had the same interests as me, but also we had the nerds, we had the scientists, we had the jocks, but the fact that we related to everyone because we all pretty much had the same background. So that was refreshing. Then going back into corporate America is when I had to relearn how to dial back to be Byron.
Mm-hmm.
So, and because honestly, those are two different people.
Mm-hmm.
And not only as Black men, but as any person of color, when you're in corporate America, you have that duality to where the person you are at work is totally different than the person that you become once you get in your car and leave the parking lot.
Yeah.
So it's and I wouldn't say it's frustrating. It's part of the game that we have to learn to be successful. That's why I don't know if I'm getting off topic, but that's why I'm so proud of the younger generation in doing entrepreneurial stuff. You with your podcast, because you guys are saying, no, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be me all the time. And I'm going to learn how to navigate this world being me and still be successful. Because we growing up, we were told one thing: go to school, get a job.
When I got out to Kirkwood, like when the whole podcast is about like, mental health, blah, 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 and all that. And like part of the things we talked about initially is like boys have limited vocabulary, limited words, and limited ways to express themselves. Even like in high school, like Black nerds and Black whatever, there's limitations. Like if you were Black and you didn't play basketball, limitations. If you was Black and you didn't hang out with Black people, limitations. You had to align yourself some way, in a way to feel safe, if that makes sense. So like my path was a little bit different. It's like, I think there's a terminology, like it's a difference between diversity and integration. If that makes sense. What you experienced was diversity. Like we have this grouping of people here. They don't always interact with each other. They're still working and relating through dominant cultural rules. When I say dominant culture, that's a nice way of saying the way that white people set up society here in America. But it's still, whether it's white or Black, because race is a made-up construct. I grew up in Central Missionary Baptist Church, 175 years. It was created by slaves, but the people there was kind of bougie. So we had highly educated, we had doctors, and we had people from them streets. So it was varied. So integration, but of people of color. My parents got divorced when I was 2. My dad has some steel in him. He has a strong personality. And I think initially when he was young, he believed it didn't matter what you said. It didn't matter how you said it, it only mattered what you said. And in the 60s, that can cause you problems. I have similar issues. So luckily, we didn't grow up in the same house, so it was needed a little bit out, so I handled that better. So I grew up in white space. I grew up in integrated spaces, not just racially, but yes, they were some racially, but it was like 50-50. So I went through Montessori schools, I went through the gifted school, and then when I got to Kirkwood, it's the first time that it was more diversity than integration. Like, and from second grade, from like elementary school up into 8th grade, I feel like it was integrated. We had Black teachers, we had white teachers. It didn't really come up. We knew about race, we knew about Black history, and we were proud of our race, and we knew about the positive things in our race. And there were white people there too. but nobody tripped off of that. A lot of my friends was black, a lot of my friends was white. When I got to high school, we had the black table at lunch. There was no black table up until 8th grade. So now I'm having to navigate that. Like, and it's funny because like when my mother made me go out to Matthew Dickey, I'm kind of an introvert. People don't believe me because I talk a lot, but I'm kind of introverted. And at times socially awkward because I can be blunt. And that's the part that I'm learning how to manage because I believe in authenticity. Say what your mouth, what you want, and then let's work through it. And that comes up in black spaces and white spaces. So all that said, when I got to Matthew Dickey and it's all these like, different types of black people that I'd never really acted before, now I'm nervous. So when I got out to Kirkwood, I was a little nervous around some black people because the rules is different. I mean, like how they interact. And I ain't trying to fight everybody, And so how can I be blunt? How can I interact without, for lack of a better term, pissing people off? Because most of the time I'll be just kidding. But I be kidding. Sometimes people get in their feelings. But he would help. And he's like, yeah, don't say that. And don't say that to them. So I'll be like, okay. The funny thing is like there was a large black community there. So that's through Kirkwood. And now I'm at Fonbonne. And I have all these great ideas of what I think college is going to be. And I get on campus and there's 7 black boys on campus. Total. And 6 of them had different lifestyle choices prior to being in college. But now, they different. They go through college, but then it's me. And I was the only boy on both sides of my family growing up till I was 12, so I've always been around all women. Now, so like I'm kicking it with some of the black girls, but it's all like white people. And so like the issue that I have now is that when I'm at lunch, I'm sitting with the black people. But every other aspect of my life on the campus is kind of more integrated with white folks. Because I need the community of being with black folks, but my life ain't like yours. Like I ain't going to clubs and hitting people with 40-ounce bottles. Not that they all did. But I mean, I ain't trying to go on my life. I can't go on the east side, dog. That ain't my life. I wasn't strapped, and I ain't trying to do all that. So then, then I get out, to the workspace and it's even less. So the things that I've tried to craft is I can't help but be me. I can't help but be me. I can't have a separate me at work and a separate me here. What happens is I have to let people get to know me and long enough so that I can be me and let more and more of me out. The scary part is that dance in the beginning because I don't trust people.
Listen, the fellas are shedding light on so many different things. This conversation could have went on and on forever, but I had one more question before we end it. And I want you to answer this question in the comments if you feel so led to. If you had an opportunity to run into teenage version of you, middle school version of you, what would you tell them? What have you learned? What have your experiences shown you and taught you that if you could go back and reach out to that individual, that version of yourself, what would you tell them to prepare them for the journey that's ahead? Take a listen.
The journey is going to be hard at times, but it's all going to be worth it, little dog. That's what I would tell them. Mm-hmm. Everyone has the ups and downs in their lives. So learning to navigate those without the valleys taking too much of a toll on you and not having the highs get too high to where when that valley comes, you fall too hard. Mm-hmm. Learn that earlier.
Trust God. Rock with him. And watch him. Because what you don't know is you are the reason that I became a good student. Because like you used to kick it, but you had good habits. My habits were trash. You are who your habits are. That's what I would tell myself. But also, I learned habits from watching him.
Pink, red, so lit.